Oh God, oh dear God. Hello. Well, this morning I watched The Matrix Resurrections, and I think for the next few minutes I'm going to do my very best to stop you making the same mistake. Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. Yep, I watched The Matrix Resurrections this morning. As you know, it was released just before Christmas. I think it's available online now. And I thought I would take a look at it, despite the fact it's had, I think it's fair to say, middling reviews. Because I have a certain fondness for the first Matrix film. Now, I'm old enough to remember going to see the film back in 1999. What do you mean? How could you possibly have gone to see a film like this on your own in 1999? I know, it's amazing, but I did. And it was, to use a much abused phrase, a phenomenon. It was a new type of science fiction. It was a new type of action movie. It was revolutionary. It was directed, of course, by the Wachowski brothers. And it was a very clever, very intricate story which played with our perceptions, our understandings of humanity and what humanity was all about. It transpired that we were all slaves of an alien race that had created something called the Matrix that we all thought we were living in. Genius, really clever. And that sort of thing is fairly commonplace in science fiction, other sort of virtual worlds, artificial reality, multiverses, all that sort of thing. We're quite familiar with that in subsequent science fiction. But certainly the Matrix, when that came along in 1999, we've not seen anything like it before, not just in terms conceptually, but also visually. The Wachowskis brought a fantastic visual aesthetic to this film. This sort of strange otherworldliness to it. This world that was like ours, but not quite like ours. And of course, all the action scenes, the much lauded bullet time sequences, the kung fu scenes, the action scenes, the chases. It was all dialed up to 11, and it was faster paced and more modern than anything we'd ever seen before. It really was absolutely revolutionary. And like I said, it was a genuine phenomenon. But like all phenomenons, sorry, Red Visitor again, like all phenomenons, what can you do? What can you do? Like all phenomenons, of course.
Phenomena.
Phenomena, the edge is taken off when the creators go back to the well. And we had those two sequels, The Matrix Reloaded and shot at the same time, The Matrix Revolutions, which came out a year apart or 6 months apart, which were pretty dreadful. They were sort of pseudo-intellectual claptrap, mumbo-jumbo, increasingly convoluted and uninteresting storylines, and just repeats of the same old visual effects. The first Matrix, of course, reintroduced us to Keanu Reeves, and it gave him a whole new persona, a whole new cinematic lease of life, and he became an action hero, a role he's adapted to quite well over the years in the John Wick franchise, which rolls on with a fourth film due out. I think it's been delayed, it's coming out at some point in the next year or so. But The Matrix as a piece was just perfect. But of course, as I say, going back to the story with those two sequels diluted the impact of it to the point that really I'd like to watch The Matrix again, but I just think of those two leaden sequels and it just puts me off. And I was going to watch The Matrix again before attempting The Matrix Resurrections. Now, I was a bit dismayed to learn 18 months, 2 years ago, they were going to do a fourth Matrix film, directed now by Lana Wachowski. And I thought, I don't think we need this. What I remembered, Neo and Trinity, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, died in the last film, but it sort of wrapped up the storyline in a way that was satisfactory, if not particularly enjoyable. This film has come out in the last fortnight or so. It's not been very well reviewed. Box office has been iffy. Whether the plan was to launch a new trio of films. I don't know. Don't think that'll happen now. But I did sit down and watch it this morning because I thought, well, I was just in the mood for something like that this morning. I really wish I hadn't, because it was dull, it was uninvolving, and it was just dated. It had nothing new to offer visually. I mean, it had all the same old tricks. You even had Neo at one point shouting out, "Bullet time!" And I still know Kung Fu. But you sort of thought, yeah, I've seen all this. We've had 100, probably 1,000 action films, science fiction films that have gone down this road, picked up this battle and run with it and told different similar stories with these techniques. And I did think, well, perhaps they're coming back because they've got a new angle, something really clever and something original. I suppose the only clever thing about this is the way that they have resurrected the idea of the Matrix and they resurrected the idea of Neo. And that is quite meta, quite self-referential, the idea that Thomas Anderson, Neo, played by Keanu, of course, is actually a computer program who has created 3 popular computer games called The Matrix and has been asked to create a 4th one. Of course, this opens up the actuality of a new Matrix reality. I'm not going to go too much into the plot because, to be quite honest, it's a lot of old toot and it doesn't really bear much repeating. But I just watched this thing, barely engaged for the first 40 minutes because it's just rather dull. Briefly engaged by the action sequences, which, whilst not anything new, were at least a bit lively. There's a couple of chases and a couple of fight scenes. There's one pretty spectacular fight scene in some sort of warehouse type place, which is quite good. But I just, all the way through it, I was just thinking, seen all this, not just in the Matrix films, but in so many other films. And I don't think that anybody comes out of this with any credit, really. It just seems like Hollywood going back to a very dry well and dragging up some mud. Because there's nothing... I don't see the point in this film. I don't know why it was made, other than the fact that somebody at Warner's probably thought, oh, well, actually, Matrix was popular 20 years ago. There's an audience, the nostalgia factor. And I think that the core idea behind it works in resurrecting the character. That's okay. That's sort of clever in a slightly knowing way. But the rest of the film is just dull. It really is dull because there's nothing new. The slow-mo effects, the visual effects themselves, the kung fu slow motion fight scenes. I just felt, yeah, this was great in The Matrix, but you're just doing the same things again with a story that's no longer, hasn't got that wow of the first film. None of the subsequent films did, because that was the selling point, the fact that we were told we were living in a Matrix world. Performance-wise, well, you haven't got Lawrence Fishburne. He's not back this time. There's a new Neo. Carrie-Anne Moss. I did say Carrie-Anne Moss before. Did I say Carrie-Anne Fisher? Well, I meant Carrie-Anne Moss. She's back and she's fine. Keanu, yeah, he's aged well. But I just don't care. I really don't care. We haven't got Hugo Weaving back as Smith. He was quite a charismatic sort of presence. He's an actor we don't see enough of, really. He's quite sort of understated as an actor, whether he's not comfortable with celebrity and sort of starring in things. But I'd like to see more of him because he's a good performer. But he's not back as Smith. There's some new, and to be honest, I can't even be bothered to make a note of who these people are playing these parts because it's just so underwhelming. The whole thing is just a bit of a waste of time, to be honest. Neil Patrick Harris is in it. He's the sort of villain of the piece, as much as there is a villain. And he's good value because he always is. And there's quite a nice scene at the end where Trinity confronts him and they have a little bit of a dust-up, which is the film's only real effort at trying to be funny. It ends with Neo and Trinity, flying off through the sky, hopefully never to return, because I don't really want to see this stuff again. And I don't think it certainly won't do well enough for anybody to want another one. And it's a shame because it's just another nail in the coffin of the original Matrix, which is still a good film. One day I will revisit it when I've sort of finally deleted the other films from my brain, when I remember very little about Revolution and Reloaded anyway, except that Reloaded was bloated and felt pompous. And this is just not one I'll ever want to see again. So I'm afraid I can't give you a very positive spin on this because it's just not very good. It's well made, I suppose. It's competently made. The action scenes are decently staged, but there's no wow, there's no whoa, never seen that before. That's incredible. It's just, it's a car chase. Oh, look, there's a fight. You know, we see this stuff on television now. It hasn't got that uniqueness about it to make it cinematic. It's out now if you want to see it. Just to sort of tick off the Matrix box, then be my guest. But don't blame me if you come out thinking, why did I go and see this crap? Matrix Resurrections gets from me, I think I'll give it a 3 out of 10, which is probably quite generous, really. But it's not one that I will watch again. Right, that's all from me for the moment. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's not been incredibly in-depth. I don't think this film deserves it, to be honest. It's a disappointment, even on the basis I thought it would be disappointing. It's disappointing in that regard. But it's out in cinemas now. If you want to go see it, please do. If you do, and you thought, well, actually, I didn't think it was too bad, why not let me know? Did I miss something? Didn't I go in with an open enough mind? Perhaps I was expecting not to like it. And I wanted a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing. Who knows? Anyway, if you've seen it, let me know what you thought of it. Comment down below would be lovely. Like and subscribe. And until I see you next time, hey, keep taking the stuff.